I felt like I just had the bionic arm put on me. What did you do? How did you do that? And he said, I told you. You do have a shoulder problem, but the real issue is in your neck. It was one of these God moments for me where it was going to literally change the direction of my life. Innate capacity for our body to heal is always there, and it never goes away, right? Even someone dying of cancer, their body is still trying to realign. Your body's going to give you something big to listen to. What do I think healing is? I really feel that healing is realignment with who we really are. But I couldn't get rid of this energy that just felt like it was all over me, consuming me. How do we figure this out?
How do we unpack those emotions?
There was rage, justified or not, it was there. And our tendency is to ignore them, bury them. This is where people feel alone. They feel isolated. They feel trapped, right? And I think those emotions, when they are being experienced, that's your sign that you need help. My first thought was, wow, I can start loving my dad again. And the second one was, I want to learn this because I know there are people that are suffering the same way I am. So
what if the key to your health isn't in a pill bottle, but hidden in your own life story? Have you ever felt stuck treating a symptom after symptom without ever feeling truly well? Well, today we're joined by Dr. Randy, a chiropractor and holistic health expert who takes us on a profound journey beyond the surface level of illness. He shares a powerful personal story of how a debilitating shoulder injury was healed, not by focusing on the shoulder itself, but by addressing a hidden issue in his neck, a moment that completely changed his understanding of the body. In this conversation, we unpack the true meaning of healing. Is it about being fixed, or is it about realigning with who we truly are? Dr. Randy breaks down the 4 main causes of chronic disease, from toxins and trauma to our own belief systems, and explains why so many of us are disconnected from our body's incredible capacity to heal itself. If you've ever wondered why you're not getting better, or want to understand the deep connection between your emotions and your physical health, this episode is for you. Hi, Dr. Randy. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
You're welcome. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. So let's start with a background and your philosophy related question. So Dr. Randy, can you share a story or a turning point that first inspired you to look beyond just treating symptoms and start exploring the deeper connections between physical health, emotions, and belief systems in your work?
Yeah. So let me start with just the physical symptoms, because there's a lot there. I think when I first recognized that, my mom actually wanted me to be a chiropractor. And this is funny. Like she pushed me towards certain things I liked, certain things I pushed back. And there was a Christmas that I was home. I had been rehabbing my shoulder after an injury, and it was going well. So I thought, and she encouraged me to go to her chiropractor, and it's kind of like, whatever. I was 24, I was married, and I'm like, fine. I just did it to appease her, right? And so I spent several hours with him, and I thought, this is really cool, but I want to do physical therapy, or I want to go somewhere else. But at the end, I said, hey, what would you do? What would you do for my shoulder? And he's like, well, I mean, it could be a number of things. I need to check you, examine you. I'm like, well, let's do it. I'm here. Like, it was kind of a little probably rude of me to expect him to do that, but he did. Tested a lot of muscles on me, and into my frustration, they were all weak. Like, he was doing muscle testing where he's challenging different muscles. And I had done like 6 months of physical therapy thinking that, hey, I've rebuilt my shoulder. It's better. It's stronger. And it wasn't.
Was it applied kinesiology that he
Yeah, it was.
applied?
It was
Okay.
AK. Yep.
Okay.
Very skilled practitioner. I've been
Yeah.
adjusted by him as a kid, and now I'm 24. So anyway, I was really frustrated. I said, okay, well, what would you do about it? Again, thinking like, you're going to fix it, or are you just going to like tell me what's wrong? And he's like, well, I got to adjust you because the problem is not coming from your shoulder. It's actually coming from your neck. And I thought, whatever, I don't have pain in my neck. I associated pain with that's where the problem is.
The
Right?
location. Okay.
We
Yeah.
do, right? We have symptoms.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Pain, that's the problem. And I said, Doc, like the pain's here. It's not in my neck. And he said, just let me do this.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So he adjusted me, and then he retested all those muscles, and every one of them was strong. Like I felt like I just had the bionic arm put on me. I'm like, I can do anything. This is incredible. And it was super exciting for me. And then I'm like, what did you do? How did you do that? Like I've been in physical therapy for months. And he said, I told you, you do have a shoulder problem, but the real issue is in your neck, and it's the nerves not getting to the muscle spindle. There's a disconnect there, and I adjusted that. And now this doesn't happen all the time, right? When it's just like super fast like that, this does not always happen. But it was one of these God moments for me where it was going to literally change the direction of my life. And he said, so you can go be like a trainer or whatever you want, but if you really want to change people's lives, he's like, this is an opportunity in chiropractic. And that really resonated with me. And I said, you're right. I get to work with lots of people. I get to help them improve the quality of their life, have better outcomes, have better fulfillment. I'm in. And pretty much on the spot, I decided that I'm going full in on chiropractic. I don't know what it takes, but I'm going to do that. Came home, walked into my in-laws' house. My wife was like, how is it? And I said, I'm going to chiropractic school. And her dad was like, oh my gosh, why? Do you want to reconsider? Are you sure? Like, do they get their degrees out of a Cracker Jack box? And I said,
were you working at this time?
Was I working? I was in school. I was still trying to figure out like what I wanted to do. I knew whatever path I chose, like I had to be full in. It wasn't something where just get a job, which my wife was encouraging me to. But anyway, I went full in. We went back out to college. We were visiting home for Christmas. Went back out to college, met a chiropractor, started working for him, and then really began to see kind of the essence of what helped me build my philosophy in health, which was our bodies have the capacity to heal. They just need to get rid of interference, whatever that is, this noise, this inflammation, whether it's in the spine, whether it's chemical, toxin. And I didn't know anything at this time about toxicity, about chemical exposure, mold, nothing. I just knew, wow, you can get adjusted and you can clear a lot of stuff in the body and help it improve. And then I chose where I wanted to go to chiropractic school. That was actually cool. And this is actually pertinent to this conversation, so I'll share it. Because sometimes, again, in life, you think you know where you need to be, and then it turns out, no, you just needed to start taking action so you could actually see your path. And I went up to a college in New York and felt really strongly, before visiting that I needed to go there. They had a lot of things that I liked, had a great visit, talked to different professors there. But as I was walking off the campus, getting in my car, literally my wife calls and she's like, so are you done? How was it? And this pit just welled up in my stomach. And I couldn't tell her over the phone, but it was like this message, you're not going here. I'm like, what do you mean? I just had this great visit. It was cool. Like they have so many great things here. And yet I knew in my heart, this is not where you're going to go. Couldn't tell her. Finally, I did, honestly, obviously. Kind of was working through then, like, where am I supposed to go then? I know I don't want to go to certain places. I knew where I didn't want to go. And then, again, my chiropractor at the time, Dr. Hansen, he's like, well, there's this school opening up in Florida that they've only been open for, I want to say it was maybe 8 months, a year.
At that
And
time.
he said they're not accredited yet. This was now how many years ago? This was 2003, right? So 22 years ago. He said they're not accredited yet. They've got a couple things going, but they're going to have it all. Like everything will be fine. And that sounds intriguing. So everything worked out. Just happened. My parents were going to be in Florida, so I didn't have to, rent a place, stay. Didn't have any money. Flew down there. The instant I stepped on the campus, it was like, you're home. This is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I just knew it.
Yeah.
And then as it turns out, the people, not just in the school, but in the very class that I started in, the students brought speakers in that they met, that have been influential in my life for now the past 22 years. Like I've worked with them, they've coached me, mentored, and it was all, again, all this happened because of where I was and listened to that voice instead of
your intuition. Yeah.
My heart, following where my soul is guiding me. And sometimes I don't, and I screw things up. We all do that. But those were moments where it really helped me, one recognize like how, and I didn't know at the time, right? Starting school, I had no idea what was going to happen. But you connect the dots when you look backwards, and it was like, wow, this was incredible to see all these things that took place to get me here. And again, even graduating from school there in Florida, I didn't know what was going to happen next. But again, these people that I had met in school, these chiropractors that were already established, that were already doing great things, that I kind of circled back, and they were introduced to me in life again, a few years down the road, couple years down the road. It had so much influence, and were very pivotal in where I am now, and the people that I've met along the way, and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So, and all of those things helped me recognize that everything that we need is within us, right? Yeah. Everything is there to heal. We may need assistance and help from people. Our bodies may need things because it's so toxic that it needs to get stuff out of the body. But really, the innate capacity for our body to heal is always there, and it never goes away, right? Even someone dying of cancer, their body is still trying to realign, but the disease process has just happened so fast and so much that there's not enough time to realign.
Wow, that's so powerful. And you're absolutely right. Majority of the answers are within us. I think, especially in our modern day generation, we just don't listen to our intuition as much because we're flooded with information from everywhere, from social media, from the news. So because of that overload of information, I think we're losing our own voice, which is why, we're not listening to ourselves more, and majority of our decisions are influenced. So Dr. Randy, you talked a little bit about healing. Now, healing is a word we hear everywhere these days, but it can mean so many different things, right? Depending on who you ask, who you talk to. I've heard people describe it as a journey full of ups and downs, moments of pain, moments of breakthroughs, where sometimes it's less about fixing what's wrong and more about finding a new sense of wholeness, who you are, coming home to yourself, just like how you described your moment when you visited the college in Florida. So I've also heard people describe it as, even if their circumstances didn't change, they found healing by changing the meaning that they gave to that experience. Yeah. So by reconnecting with themselves on a deeper level. So from your perspective, what does true healing look like?
So let's first talk about what it's not, if I can, right? And then
yes,
talk about
please.
like what it is. I think that when we look at healing, there is this expectation of being fixed, right? Like something's going to take away, like something's going to take away the problem. And I think a lot of times we're conditioned to, like, again, Western society especially. There's a problem, you go to the doctor, they give you a medication, and cool, you're fixed. Well, no, not really, because we look at where disease is and it's rampant and it's getting worse. And so I do think that healing is less about fixing and more than and being in alignment. And when I say that, my coach taught me this years ago, and I see it more and more, and I'm moving more into that in my own practice in terms of how I work with patients and people, that I think from very early on, because of how we receive messages, how we perceive our environment, like even starting at age 0, right? 0 to 7, our brains open, we're in this brainwave state where everything is real, everything is true, and you can't, in that age, you really can't rationalize, or you can't compartmentalize and say, oh, mom just wasn't feeling good that day, or dad was just, tired, and that's why, that was said. No, it's real, and it hits, and then it sticks. And that's the problem, is when it sticks and stays, and it becomes the framework for how we see life, the meaning that we give to life, the things that we focus on, and that really directs then our state of being, right? So our meaning that we give it, the focus, how we move our body, right? All those things are very intricate into our physical being, our beingness, right?
Yes.
And so I think that when we look at health, disease, symptoms, whether they're mental, whether they're physical, I really think that there is a misalignment from where our soul wants to go, and our mind, we let our mind, the fear, start to deviate from that. And we don't even know it's happening because of the meaning that we've given to things. We think that, this is the direction I need to go. And if we had the awareness to see, how are we making decisions? Are those decisions being made out of fear? Are they being made from lack? Are they being made because we're not enough? And so maybe we shy away and we don't do something. And with each of those, we begin to veer away from these gifts, these talents, this essence of who we are. And then symptoms crop up. Right. Little things, right? We can have injuries. We can have repeat illnesses that are going up, and we want to push straight through them because we've been taught, and I'm speaking to me here, and I've done this for a long time, push through physical injuries because we're taught your value is based on what you do, what you produce, how much money you make, go. And so you keep making decisions based on that fear, that lack, that not enough. Symptoms arise, and then eventually it gets bad enough that you have to make a correction. And I think in that place, you can either become bitter and recognize, like, well, nothing works for me, right? And you just keep going down that path, or it's the opportunity to realign. Right. And for many, I was talking to a buddy last night about that. I said, for many, especially men, that first big symptom that they listen to is a heart attack. And now
because they don't express.
Yeah, they don't share anything. They just ignore symptoms, right? No matter what the symptoms are, they're ignored. No big deal. Push through it. And
the saying of be like a man or act like a man.
Yeah, like we're supposed to be strong, no emotion, push through everything. And so now you're in a hospital bed, and there's no control. And what do people often say? Gosh, I've been missing so much of my life. Like, I haven't been focused on the right things. And it causes this massive course correct where I need to spend more time with family. I need to engage more in what's most important. They forgot all those things. And that crisis brings them to a remembrance of what was most important. Does it have to get to that? No, it doesn't, right? It doesn't need to get to that place where there's a diagnosis of cancer, heart disease, autoimmune, whatever.
Yeah.
If we listen to our bodies, and I think if we are not afraid of the emotion that it may bring up, not afraid to feel, to rest, to recognize maybe I've created some patterns that I needed to change. And so I think the first step to healing is actually awareness, right? You can't fix something if you have no awareness of that thing. And that takes like calm, right? That takes, usually it is something happens that, oh, now I'm aware, like it showed up in life. And, and there's those little signs. For me, I look back at some of the Spartan races that I did. And when I was training really hard, I would always get an injury and it would put me out for a month or two. And I'd be so frustrated with it. Was I listening to my body? No, I just wanted to keep pushing. What did I do? How can I fix it fast? Really not pay attention to it, but try to keep going. And then now you can't because maybe you have like sciatica or severe back pain. And, and that would happen to me. And I couldn't work out. I couldn't do anything, but I still wasn't listening. I was forced to stop. And I went down that path of, I'm just kind of pissed. I'm angry that this happened and I need to start training again. Whereas many of those were telling me, you need to rest. You need to slow down. But we don't like that. And so I think healing is number one, it's listening. It's listening to what our body is trying to speak to us and then having an awareness to see, oh, all of these things that I'm experiencing are trying to tell me something. Stop ignoring them, start listening. And if you don't, your body's going to give you something big to listen to.
Yes.
And if you do, then you have the ability to course correct without the massive suffering. And I think so. Your question, what do I think healing is? I really feel that healing is realignment with who we really are. And it takes layers and depth and sometimes time to process. And there can be a whole lot of stuff that goes on in between that. But in its essence, that healing is a realignment.
Yeah, 100%. And wow, there was a lot of information that you just shared, and we really have to unpack that.
Sure.
I know you talk a lot about early years, childhood years, and how they're so transformative. And well, not just transformative, but are formative, actually, not just for our beliefs, but our long-term health. And I think now there's so much research out there showing that experiences in childhood, whether positive or not, just the way that our stress is being marked, the adversity, they really do leave deep imprints that affect us pretty much for decades. For example, I've seen in my life that some children who experience some instability are more likely to face some chronic conditions as adults. And then whereas when you grow up in a very safe, supportive household, you are far more likely to have better mental and physical outcomes. So for me, having gone through an autoimmune condition myself, or going through, actually, I'm still am, and I've done so much research on the causes, because I feel like diet, lifestyle, definitely all these are one, but sometimes, you get to a point where no matter how much you do, you just don't see the change. Like you don't see things changing. And so I did a lot of research, and one of the studies that really struck to me on mind-body connection, similar to what you said, is it was talking about how we perceive our illness, whether we feel hopeful or hopeless, or do we feel empowered or stuck. That can really help shape the outcome of the health and even affect things like pain levels, immune function, and even whatever treatment that we're going through, how we respond to that. And so I think for me, I sense that my body's holding on to something, maybe old emotions. And I know that after reading, so much research, maybe releasing those emotions can really lead to real physical changes. But, Dr. Randy, the challenge is, how do you recognize that? Or how do you even know that this is this repressed or suppressed emotion?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out, honestly. I think it's different for people. I'll share for me. Well, I'll go back. So this was interesting, right? When my dad passed away 10 years ago, and it was, I didn't like my dad, right? Now I love him, right? He's gone, but I am so grateful for how he raised me now, because those experiences were necessary to help me process things, to see like really my value now. At the time, didn't see that, and was on it. To be honest, I was actually glad that he died. I really was. I was like, good, now it's over, it's done. I don't have to like worry about this anymore. But that was so far from the truth. And I went about 6 months. So he passed away. I went back to work the next day, and he died in my house, right? He and my mom were living in our basement, and I watched him take his last breath. I would love to say it was a beautiful experience, like some people have. It was not. There was a lot of anger, frustration, sorrow, relief. And for 6 months, I was kind of numb. I was in business. I had my own business. I was a chiropractor. The years before that had done very well. And then he passed away, and just kind of zoned out. Didn't know what I was experiencing. Thought everything was resolved now. And then woke up essentially, and realized, and I woke up because of the financial state of the business. It was terrible. And I really had put my head in the sand, wasn't paying attention to anything, and couldn't figure out like why I couldn't get things back on track. And it was really, I couldn't get myself back on track. And I fought that a lot. But in that time, one of the things that began opening me up was a patient gave me this, she told me about something called the emotion code, body code. And at the time I was like, what? That's ridiculous. That's absurd. That's really how I felt about energy work at the time. Even though I was open to muscle testing, interesting. But I was sitting at my desk and really frustrated, because this was before my parents had moved into my house. I did not want them in the house. I didn't want that energy there. But I couldn't. I couldn't get rid of this energy that just felt like it was all over me, consuming me. And I'm at my desk. And so your question was, how do we figure this out?
How do we unpack those emotions? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think first it was sitting back, and there was anger, there was rage, justified or not, it was there. And our tendency is to ignore them, bury them, especially guys, bury them. But you get to a point where you can't. Everyone else sees it. Everyone
Life
else
forces
sees
you to
what's
see
going
it.
on. and they try, right? You can have a spouse that's like, hey, what's wrong? Nothing. That emotion, that nothing word had a lot of emotion behind it. And my wife and I were not mature enough yet to like actually hold space for ourselves, for each other. And so I might say I'm fine, and she wouldn't say anything, and vice versa. If she was like, I'm fine, I'd be like, whatever, you're sure, you'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And I got to a point where I couldn't deal with that anymore. So what do you do with it? I mean, this is where people feel alone. They feel isolated. They feel trapped, right? And I think those emotions, when they are being experienced, that's your sign that you need help. Like you need to get it out. You need to talk, and you got to find somewhere safe, right? And I wasn't sure at the time well, actually I did know people I could confide in, who I could share what I was experiencing. And I decided to seek that out, right? And I didn't share everything, right? It was just a little bit. And in every time I did that, I felt more love. And I felt like, okay, you're going in the right direction. But that is going to be different for everybody.
Right.
There's not one way to begin to unpack those. It goes back to awareness and like, are you really happy? And how judgmental are you of yourself and others? What are all the flaws you're seeing in other people? Because really that's a reflection of what you're seeing in yourself. You just don't want to admit it. So we blame everything else. And that's what I was doing. I was blaming my lack of success. I was blaming where business was. I was blaming frustration with family and everything on everything else outside of me. It's not my fault. It's the way I was raised. It's this, it's this, it's this. And again, you get to a point where I didn't like it. And
Yeah.
I hated it, actually. And fortunately, good people in my life share things with me. They were open. They knew that I would be somewhat open. And so this patient shared with me body code. If you can go, how I kind of, is it okay if I go into this and share a little?
Yeah,
bit
please. Yeah, absolutely.
So she shared that with me. I was super turned off to body code at first, emotion code, which is just a very simple way to release trapped trapped energy in the form of emotion. Sitting at my desk, I've been praying, fasting, all these things to try to release this energy. And sometimes I joke and I swear this little chart of emotions just appeared. It just like showed up on my desk. I'm like, it wasn't there a second ago. Now it is.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I'm like, what the heck? I might as well try. So I started muscle testing these different, energies. And are these in the body? And the things that were coming up, I'm like, yep. Feel that, all those. And then there was a little procedure to release it. And when I did that at the end, like this massive weight lifted off my shoulders. It was incredible. It was palpable. I felt 100 pounds less. And this was honestly just the very beginning of this healing process for me that would take like literally years to unpack.
Yeah.
Again, because of my resistance to it. But I remember that was the beginning. And then my first thought was, wow, I can start loving my dad again. And the second one was, I want to learn this because I know there are people that are suffering the same way I am. So how can I learn this and become skillful at this in a way to help? And I tried, and I was very insecure, right? Very fearful of what will people think. This is very different than chiropractic. This is like woo-woo stuff. Like, how do you even describe it? But I shared it with a few people and began practicing and just told them, hey, I'll do this for free. I just want to practice. I'm trying to learn this. And in doing that, it began to soften me because I was doing this with friends. And as these different emotions would come up, I would ask them like, wow, you feel that? Like can you mind telling me like what's going on? And they'd start to share stuff with me. And I'm like, wow, okay, it's not just me that has these challenges. It's not just me that feels this anger at times and rage and frustration. Everyone's suffering. And it was really, this was a total like mind blow for me. Like, wow, there is so much suffering. And that little bit, and it seems silly, right? We can clearly see suffering in the world, But when we look at our neighbors, we look at friends now on social and on other places, and it's like, wow, their life is so much better than mine.
Right.
They don't have these challenges. And we create that false sense, that illusion that it's only me. And so even though I was doing this body code work, emotion code work on others, it was really softening me to have greater compassion, have greater love for others. And slowly, I began to have more love for myself. And that came off in layers. And even now, right, there are things that I'm working on, like today, this is now 10 years later, still things that I'm working on, and it's never ending. And I think that's the beauty of this life, is that we get to keep refining. So how do we begin to unpack it? I think there are two steps. I'll go back to one, awareness, and then it's taking responsibility. Like, I created this life. No one else did. Right? I even had a conversation with someone, a patient, that she was asking me, like, did I make all this stuff? Did I create this life that I have? And she was really upset about where the state of her health was, her life, relationship, like really just down. And I lovingly and compassionately, I said, well, I mean, if you look around, is there anyone else that's created that? And it was not in judgment at all. And she said, no, I guess so you're saying it's my fault. I said, no. I didn't say there's no fault here. There's no judgment.
Yeah.
It's just, you have created this. And if you recognize you've created it, now you can create something new.
Right.
But you can't create something new if you don't recognize what you've been creating all along. And so I think it's awareness. It's taking responsibility for, okay, this is my life. I'm the one that's created this. And then in love, starting to create new patterns. And I think this is where the challenging part is. How do we now start to create this after a lifetime of these same patterns? Repeat, rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash. And it feels impossible. Totally. But I really believe those are those steps that are necessary to take no matter where we are in our health. And they're painful. They're not comfortable. It's work.
Absolutely. And you know what you talked about reminds me of, lately there's a new buzzword out there called embodiment, which is basically just being really present in your own skin and fully living in the body and not just in the head, right? And especially with those with chronic illnesses or emotional struggles, it feels like a breakthrough moment for them. And so this reminded me actually, that it reminded me of how people talk about chronic illnesses. It's often focused on the diagnosis, right? Or the symptoms, just like how in modern medicine, it's, diabetes or heart disease or autoimmune conditions. And I've heard so many stories, like including myself, where after years of searching for answers, like I said, I felt that it was much deeper than just lifestyle factors. So from your experience of working with patients, do you think there are any underlying causes? And if so, are there any common underlying causes behind chronic illnesses?
Oh, for sure. And I think that those commonalities, I think there are really four, right? I look at toxin. So toxins are going to be environmental, man-made stuff. We see glyphosate, atrazine, all these chemicals, right? And there's so much more in the news now. You look at food dyes in the US compared, like in cereal. You look at food dyes that are used in cereal. You go to a different country. And so I feel that there are really four main causes of disease. And this is, when I say disease, like every symptom out there, I believe there are four things that are causing that. Number one is toxicity, right? And we can actually have like a 1A. Maybe one is really emotional trauma, whether perceived or real. And trauma is one of those words, well, I haven't experienced trauma. Well, Yeah, you have. I mean, we've all experienced birth is a trauma, right? And what were all
Yes.
the emotions going on with your parents at that birth?
Mm,
Because you're taking on their stuff too, in part. So emotion is probably number one in terms of what has started to like derail health from the beginning. The second one is toxicity, right? We are bombarded by chemicals. We spray more glyphosate in this country than anywhere else in the world. I think it's 300 million. I could be wrong, but I
wow.
think it's 300 million tons per year that is sprayed on our planet, right? That is massive. 300 million tons of this stuff, which is the world's strongest antibiotic. Kills everything, right? It was initially used to descale mineral buildup in pipes, and it did a fantastic job at getting all of this debris off of steel metal pipes back in I think it was like World War II or thereafter. And then someone happened to spray it on their bushes, it killed it, and it's like, oh, hey, we've got all this stuff left over from World War II.
Yeah.
We can repurpose this. And so then what happened? Then we had glyphosate and we had Roundup. And that product has decimated our soils, it's decimated our gut, and it's causing leaky gut, inflammation, which then opens the body's ability up for major illness. Right? It's kind of like if you in your house, for your audience that doesn't know what's going on inside, and they've heard leaky gut, it's really where the cells in your body, the cells specifically in your gut, they should only allow certain things through. Right? It's kind of like a gateway in your house. You're not just going to open your door and say, "Sure, anybody can come on in, come as you please, go as you want, whatever." No, you only let certain people in your home because you want to keep your family protected. Well, our cells have the same mechanism. They only let certain things in that are safe, but a lot of these chemicals, glyphosate, atrazine, different volatile organic compounds, they disrupt this defense mechanism in the gut, and now anything can begin to get through that gut lining. And it creates this beginnings of low-level chronic inflammation, which then becomes not low-level, but very severe. And now that leads to a host of other conditions. And those are just two of the chemicals. I think there are like 80,000 chemicals that we're exposed to. I don't know if that's a year or if that's over a lifetime. I don't remember. But like it's an exorbitant amount. So toxicity is number one, or number two. Number three, are bugs, right? Parasites, bacteria, viruses, fungi, mold, mycotoxin. And not to say that these should be commensal with us. Viruses, bacteria, parasites, fungi, they are all part of our body. And they're absolutely needed. However, when they're exposed to toxicity, when we're exposed to toxicity, when stress from life, stress from emotion, trauma overwhelms us, well, then these bugs begin to change. It's called pleomorphism. So they go from a state of being commensal and helping our body to now all of a sudden they're destructive, and they get in groups, right? If you look at a gang, right? One member of the gang, probably not a big deal. 100 members of a gang, they can like blow stuff up, right? And so in the body, these bacteria, through pleomorphism, start to gather together, called quorum sensing, and then they start to really wreak havoc on the body. And a lot of that is because of, again, stress response, the body's inability to maintain this nice homeostatic balance. And then the last one is trauma and injury. Right? Had there been repetitive injuries? Was there a car accident? Was there an injury at birth? And when I say injury at birth, like, was there trauma? Were there forceps? Were you a C-section? Things like even vaginal birth. All of that can create a little bit of micro trauma in the body, and then it just adds up and builds. Falling off a bike, down a ladder, wherever it is. But so I really believe that all chronic illness, all disease are coming from one, if not more, of those four things. Usually it's a combination of all of them, honestly. And if we looked at it that way, instead of each little symptom, I mean, wow, let's look at the global view of what's happening and what have you been exposed to? Why don't we treat that, work on that, instead of the millions of symptoms that those things can cause?
Yeah, absolutely. And what made me resonate with you was exactly what you just said, which is the fact that, don't just look at a symptom as itself, but look at it from a holistic lens. And my autoimmune condition was exactly that. It wasn't just toxins, because through applied kinesiology, we were able to heal some of that. We were able to treat some of that, but autoimmune is still there. Now we work on parasites. Okay. The gut is fine, but it's still there. So next it's a matter of what is it that I'm suppressing or pressing. So I think that now is on me. And so that's the kind of journey that I'm on right now. So now with that, I want to quickly touch on food real quick before we go on to trauma. So you mentioned there's chemicals everywhere now on our soil, on our food. So it almost makes us feel like we cannot eat anything, right? Even because if our soil is contaminated, what are some measures that we can take? I mean, we fairly eat organic food, but I know organic, the label only takes away a certain number of chemicals, but there's no 100% unless you know a farmer and you know exactly how they kind of maintain the farm and grow their crops. So what are some ways that we can instill safety and confidence in our families, though we know that our food is contaminated?
Yeah. So I should go back and say there are probably 5 things that cause disease. Nutrient deficiencies are definitely in there.
Yeah. But isn't nutrient deficiency also caused by toxins? Like, for example, for me, I had iron deficiency, but then the reason I had iron deficiency is because I had bacteria eating away my iron. Do you think they're correlated?
I do. I do think they're correlated. And so, yes, you can have that. Absolutely. Like toxicity will impact your body's ability to digest parasites, hidden infections, mold, mycotoxins. I mean, they're all going to impair the systems that would allow your body to actually digest, absorb, assimilate. And yet, nutrient deficiencies are also rising because of what you just hit on, and what we talked about was toxicity. So you can still have people with I don't know how you have minimal exposure, but nutrient deficiencies, I think, are still rampant. And it is this cycle, right? So you have this toxicity and bugs, parasites, that kind of stuff. And yes, there is this cycle that will cause nutrient deficiencies, but it doesn't help that we're not getting nutrients from our food. And so when you talk about food, I think that we're in a fast-paced society. We want things now. We want things done. And they've made food, from these big companies to taste really good. And it is addictive. Like scientists know, like, they're really brilliant, right? And they know what to create, and they test this stuff to find out what will keep bringing people back. What's gonna make them want more of this. And so it's artificial. And our body doesn't recognize that, and it says, wow, I want more of that. That was so good. I want to taste that again. It's this sweetness that we begin to crave. It's addicting. It does create an addiction to it. And so there's that. There's, I'll say that is a big part. And we're conditioned at young to the commercials, the cereals, you look at Cheerios, right? Heart healthy, great for cholesterol. BS, it's terrible.
Sugar is like the second ingredient.
Right. And so you have all these labels that are on there, and the colors are really like vibrant. Flashy, if you notice where they put all the cereals, they put them on the lower shelf. So the kids are like, oh, look at this is awesome. I want this. It's in, cartoons, it's the advertising. So anyway, so you start off like parents are always starting off at a deficit where their kids learn about all this stuff and I want this. And it's what we've done for a long time, thinking not a big deal, until now where we recognize, oh man, all these dyes, right? What are they causing? They're causing problems with kids' brains, whether it's causing ADD, ADHD, mental disorders. I know in my 5-year-old, when he gets his hands on Skittles, which is not because I've given them to them, he's a mess, right? And I think Skittles are probably like one of the worst possible foods you could ever eat. You have the sugar, you have the dyes, all the crap in there anyway. But if he gets that and he eats them, it's just like, oh, geez, you're a ticking time bomb. Like it's just moments before now your brain isn't processing. We want you to do something and you freak out.
And there's a behavior issue then. So that's probably why we see more behavior issues in kids in schools, especially.
Yeah, because of all this, because of the chemical component, the toxicity, and they are toxic, right? So you've got that. But then back to your question, like, what do we do? I think I don't know where people are politically, and maybe that doesn't matter, but I love the fact that there are people in these places of decision making that are so focused on bringing a lot of this to light.
Yes.
They want to show the difference of why is Fruit Loops in Canada only have ingredients that are natural. The dyes in there are coming from actual food, from beets, from turmeric, from like these are where the dye is coming. And then you look at the dyes in Fruit Loops in the US and it's red 40 and blue 30 and orange whatever. It's like, why is that such a difference? And again, it's money. I mean, unfortunately, it all comes down to money and making a profit and having control over certain things, which we can go there if we want to as well. But that just sets us up for loss. So I think where I was going with that was I'm glad that the recognition is there to see all the points of toxicity. And yes, it can be defeating. As a parent, as just an individual, it's like, why even bother? Like if everything has toxicity, why even try? Mm-hmm. And I would say we try because the more that we invest our money, and I'm not saying invest in stocks, I'm saying invest in healthy foods, you're telling the market what you want.
Right.
You're dictating what foods come into stores. I mean, heck, you even look at Costco, right? In here in Southwest Idaho, how has Costco changed over the past 6 years? Well, they have all of these grass-fed, grass-finished, meat now. They never used to have that. Yeah. They have lamb from New Zealand that has never been touched with, with pesticides on the soil, pesticides in the grass. It's clean. It's healthy. And so the market dictates. So does it matter? Absolutely. The more that you invest in healthy food, the more that you're actually dictating to the market what you want. And in this society, whether you like capitalism or not, where you spend your money is what's going to grow. And this is where like finding your farmers, finding your local people, invest in that because it gives them the ability to produce more. And so it's not why even try? It's try because you actually can make a difference with where you're spending money. And you may think, oh, it's just me, it's just one person. Now there's so many people that are wanting healthy, organic, real food now more than ever. Yes. Because of different things that have been exposed. So you can actually influence what's going on. And you're worth it. Like, I won't go down that rabbit hole right at the moment, but there's a lot of coercion. There's a lot of money involved in so much of this. And I really do believe there's been a dumbing down of people because of what the chemicals have done to our brains, to our body. And so being healthy is fantastic. We want to be healthy. but we want to be able to think clearly. We want to be
Right.
able to process information, be able to use our mind in a way that is productive and creative and life-giving. And if you're putting chemical into your body, like you're killing brain cells. You're killing your body's capacity to actually be in line with itself and communicate and have that beautiful expression of life. You're harming that, and so it's a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love how you said, we as consumers have so much power when we're buying food from the grocery stores, because the more we read ingredients, the more we are actually conscious about what we bring home and put in our bodies. It just creates a ripple effect, because then our families and our kids are also aware of what to do. And it just impacts the future generations and everyone around them to live a more healthier lifestyle. That definitely comes with, situations where some people around you may say things like, and this is a true story, we had the same Fruit Loops or we had the same cereal and we turned out fine. And, I've tried convincing a lot of people around me to say that in response that food back then was much different from the way it is now, from the way it's being grown, from the way it's being processed. I think so much has changed. And it's not as easy. Like, I am the kind of person that will be so nitpicky at the grocery store. Will read all the labels. Will make sure it doesn't have seed oils, no dyes, none of that, because I believe that, especially your pantry, is literally the first place that determines your health. If you have junk food in your pantry, then you're more likely to reach out to it. Whereas if you don't even bring it home, there's no chance that you're even going to touch it or even put it in your body. So I've had these situations in my family where they're like, "Oh, we had the same food. It's fine." So how do you react to that? How do you respond to situations where someone says, the same, like they had the same bread from the grocery store, they had the same inorganic produce, and they're fine. Whereas nowadays we're more conscious, right?
Well, I guess it depends on how direct we want to be with people. You can ask, well, what's the state of your health? You say you're fine, but are you? Are you really? Is your health exactly where you want it to be? Can you do all the things that you want without questioning, am I going to be okay to do this? Will I have enough energy? Am I going to be able to get enough rest? I think that that's a big concern with a lot of people, and they don't look at that as this is because of my lifestyle. They're taught it's, well, because you have a disease or something
condition,
else.
yeah.
That's why. And we've separated food from like health. I don't know where this disconnection happened, but we've completely separated our lifestyle from the quality of our health. Like, they don't equate, and there's this massive disconnect. And I think part of it is because we are not connected to the land anymore. We're not connected to each other. We're not even connected to ourselves. So when you look at the quality of health, it's declining in general. So we look at lifespan, and I think it was last couple of years was the first time in decades that it actually decreased. But in general, lifespan has been increasing. And so people are like, "Oh, we live the longest, we're amazing." But when you look at health span, right, health span is about 25 to almost 30 years less than lifespan. So what do I mean by that?
Like staying
People
healthy.
Staying healthy, but being able to function. And I think I heard a stat that was people over 65 they have 5 or more chronic conditions. And they're on at least like 5 to 8 medications. So what is now the quality of their life? And what was the quality of their life before they were finally diagnosed with a problem, right? Their health was already declining and they knew it, but maybe weren't doing anything about it. Maybe were chasing a diagnosis, finally found one. Oh, this is why I'm sick. Because, and they go back to, it's your genes. Well, it's hereditary. It's this, it's BS. It's because your lifestyle. And there was actually, this was back in the early 1900s. I wish I remembered the name, but this went back to like Rockefeller and Rothschilds, where they wanted to manage what was happening in medical schools. And this does answer your question. And I think this is where this disconnect comes. There were a few hundred, maybe 100, not a few hundred, like 115, 130 medical schools in the early 1900s. And they had, they were petroleum kings at the time, Rockefeller and these others. And they knew that they could start making medications with these petroleum, with this petroleum. And so they wrote a paper, and I forgot the name of it. I wish I remembered, but they wrote a paper saying, this is how medical school is going to be. And we are only going to focus on the science. When you hear that, run. Like, there is no the science. Science evolves. But it was kind of the science based on what we deem it to be. And it was really based on the medications that we're creating to treat disease. And so they sent this decree out that you will no longer get funding unless you conform to what we say. I'll have to get the name of that study and send it to you, or that paper. And so the number of schools went from like 115, 130 down to 30 because they lost funding. And now in those schools, it was pretty much deemed that you will not talk about nutrition. You will not talk about sunlight. You will not talk about these foundational principles of health. And you're going to focus on medication and disease, which is still, this document is still really present today. And it's still how medical schools are run, based on all their curriculum comes from the pharmaceutical industries, what they want them to teach, what they want them to learn. They get maybe 20 minutes of nutrition, and everything is specialized down to like this minute amount. So no one actually sees the big picture. And so the conditioning has occurred that health is outside of you. It's not found from within. It has nothing to do with your lifestyle. It has everything to do with your genes, your heredity, and we have the answer through medication. So it's this conditioning that's happened for decades now. And I think finally there is a reconnection. So you go back, what do you say to those people? Sure, live your life the way you want to. I choose to live mine differently, right? And I've had family, not fortunately my immediate family, my mom, my siblings, for the most part, are very in line with health. So I've never really had to, have that, well, this is how we choose to live our life. With in-laws and with other people, they're like, dude, you're so restrictive. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, you don't allow yourself to do this or this. And I said, do I seem any less happy? Do I seem any like I'm missing out? And one of my buddies was like, no, it kind of pisses me off that you do this and you still seem happy. And I'm like, why does that matter to you? And he couldn't like put his finger on it. He's like, well, you're so restrictive. And I said, well, that's your opinion. Like that's your view of the world. I see this as it actually expands me and it lets me have greater freedom to engage in life the way that I want. So just let me live my life and you live yours. And, I could say that Mel Robbins' new book, the Let Them
Let
Theory.
them. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Let them think what they want to think. Who cares? And then at the same time, let me do what I feel is in line with my values. Let me 100%. Eat the way I want to. Let me have the lifestyle that I want to. If you don't want that, fine. I don't need to judge you. Why do you need to judge me? And it does go both ways. I mean, I see people in the health space that it's like, how could you eat that? You know, you're vile. And we've become so dogmatic in how we eat. I'm carnivore, I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, I'm paleo. And I love how, I'll bring up Zach Bush, I love how he
Yes.
talks about why have we reduced ourselves to this is who I am. I'm a vegetarian. It's like, wow, no, you're a soul. You're a human being that likes to eat vegetables. That's fine, but why do you have to define yourself that way? And then the amount of judgment that comes. How could you eat that piece of meat? How could you eat that, you know, that fruit or vegetable? It's toxic. Really? Why do we have to judge? Why can't we just... So there's not really an answer, unfortunately. Maybe the answer is common ground. Can we ask, what do we really want? Like, you want to know why I'm living this lifestyle, or you're judging me. What is it that you really want to know? Or what is it that you really find challenging about the way I live? And I think when we seek to understand and we begin to find common ground, we actually see that we want the same things, just our experience has created differences of opinions, really. But we're so quick to judge and not quick to understand that now we are in these camps of, I'm this, I'm that, and it's really, you're not just a soul on this earth that
has opinions, perspectives, and values.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So sorry for like the rant, but I just, there's not an answer except, can we find common ground?
Yeah, no, there is an answer. I think, Dr. Randy, the way you said values with what's priority for the family, that is the answer. Is, you know, everyone has different opinions, different ways of living, and that's okay. And I think it also comes back to balance, right? Like, I'm not going to say I don't eat outside, or I don't, have seed oils, because obviously when I am traveling or when I do go eat outside, I can't be specific on, no, I want you to use butter, grass-fed butter specifically. So I do have to accept that. And so I think sometimes it's about living in balance, so that, you know, there's harmony, where you don't have regret that you're leaving something out, or you're missing something out, like get the sense of FOMO. But I think it also is giving us a sense of, I can control the controllables, right? Like when I'm at home, I can control exactly what goes in. And whereas when I'm outside, obviously I have to be flexible. And coming back to your point on, you know, how our medical system was established, I think I heard of that study, but I haven't read it. I've heard, and it also comes back to how when you go to a doctor and you say, okay, what am I supposed to eat? What am I not supposed to eat? There's never an answer. The answer is stay hydrated and eat a balanced meal. But what does that mean? Yeah. Right? And so stay hydrated. Like, okay, can you give me, okay, do I need more electrolytes? Like, what does that mean? So I think the fact that when you go to a doctor and they don't have an answer on what your nutrition should look like, it's very clear that they're not a doctor. Clearly, it's more of managing your sickness and not allowing you to be healthy. And I think definitely nutrition plays a big factor. So now coming back to emotions and the initial subject, now I want to touch on trauma a little bit, because trauma is one thing that definitely, like you said, gets used a lot, but it can mean different things to everyone, right? It can be one life-altering event, or even small experiences collectively that shape how someone sees the world. And later on in adulthood, it can even show up in ways like anxiety, concentration issues, maybe some patterns, some belief systems. So when it comes to defining trauma, and for someone who might be carrying trauma, how do you help them understand that this is what they're carrying, or these are some symptoms that show that you have signs or patterns?
That's a really good question. And I think that, how would I answer that? I think that it comes in the way I find it is, how do people talk about themselves? You start allowing people to talk, share what their condition is, and you see patterns in their words, in their language. I am right. I think the most powerful three words in life the most powerful two is I am and the word that follows. And we'll kind of go back to labels with diagnoses. I am diabetic. I am bipolar. I am depressed. When you start to hear that, it's no longer a condition, it's now an identity, right? Same thing, I am vegan, I am vegetarian. It's an identity that the person has taken on, and life changes when you create that identity. I am poor, I am broke, I am rich, I am like whatever it is, and we repeat these things.
It manifests.
It does. And this is one of the challenges that I've had over a lifetime, like valuing myself and worth. And I'm doing so many things that have been wonderful to let those things go. So, but I think to your question, how do we identify? It's the language that we use, right? What meaning are we giving things? And I'll give you for instance, let's real life situation. There was a patient I was working with, and I asked her, "Hey, tell me, like, I read her stuff. I read your history. Share with me a little bit about you." And one of the first things that she said is, like, "I'm broken." And it's like, wow, that's heavy. That's the first thing that came out of your mouth was, "I'm broken." Like, there's no filter there. She was very open to talk. And then she began to tell me, and these are all the reasons why. And I mean, they were valid reasons, but were they true? And so you can't ignore that. I mean, you can. I don't, but people do. It's like, well, we're not here for this. We're really here for your, Lyme disease or mold or whatever. Well, how can we actually help people heal and realign if we're not looking at them holistically and if we're not looking at the whole person? So I hope this is answering your question. I think it's the language that people use, recognizing that, and then reflecting back to them. So this is what you feel. This is what you think. And some are like, yeah, that's exactly it. And others are like, oh, well, I'm not sure. And we got to unpack that either way. And then I think there's a softness to, some people are ready for that. Others are not. There was another person that I had worked with, that I could tell the stress level on her. She'd come into an appointment. Hey, can we make this quick? We got to go. And it's like, dude, we're talking about your health. Like, you really want it to be quick? You don't want it to be thorough? I got so many things to do. I have these places to be. And if I don't get this done, then, all this is going to happen. And at one point I asked her, I said, do you ever focus on, like, your internal dialogue, the emotion behind all this activity? And, like, she sat up. No, we don't go there. I'm like, well, now I'm going to dig. Now I really want to know and find out. I said, why don't you go there? She's like, no, we don't do that. And I said, can I just ask why? And I said, I don't have the time. My next statement was, well, I hate to tell you this, but if you don't make it time, eventually this is the only thing that you're going to be able to focus on. And she didn't like that. but we had a good enough relationship that I didn't like break rapport. And it's like, forget it, I'm done. She actually began to make steps to work on these things. So I think we've got to listen and reflect and mirror and not be so quick to judge, or, oh no, you're a wonderful person, you're fantastic, right? It's so easy to just brush that off. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to go there with you. No, you're wonderful. You look healthy. You're great. Well, tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And so I hope I'm answering that question.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes, though, in our modern day, it does take a bit more than just sitting down and listening, right? Because think about it, Dr. Andy, like it was such a fast paced modern day life. There's a saying, right? A rich man wants many things, but a sick man only wants good health. Or just wants to feel healthy. And so I think that just reminds me that sometimes in our day, until we get sick or until we reach that threshold where we don't feel good, we don't put attention. It's kind of sad, but we don't give it that time and that energy to really dig deeper and to do what's necessary for our body.
No, we don't, and that's the problem. And so this goes back to, you can focus on, you can actually listen, or eventually it's the only thing you're going to be able to listen to.
Exactly.
And so there's not an answer. I think this is kind of the beauty of life, which I have kids that they span from 23 down to 5. And so they're all at different stages: parenting adult kids, parenting teenagers, parenting young kids, right? It's very different.
Yeah.
And my wife and I take the approach now of, you got to figure this out. We can't do it for you. And I think this is one of the things where we don't want to deal with it, right? And this is the challenge. But I think I would ask, yes, we're in a fast-paced life. Yes, we have a lot of things. The question is how do you want to engage in life? Right? I think before we know what we should do, it's figuring out what we want and what we don't want. I know I don't want this, right? I did this exercise 2 days ago with my coach. I'm trying to figure out, how actually do I want my schedule to be? And it's been a challenge, because at times I felt like I'm very much just back to back to back to back to back. And then I'm exhausted, but still expected to perform. Right? Show up, yeah. Right? But the energy is not there. So, and then what happens, and maybe I hope people can relate to this, then what happens is, I can't take anybody new. I don't even want new patients. Well, I don't mean that, but in my mind, I'm so exhausted that I don't want more of this. Okay, well, now I put this energy out into the world that I don't want more. So guess what? No one shows up to the clinic. And then it's like, what's happening? How come no one's showing up? Oh yeah, because I put that energy out there that I don't want this, when that's really not true. It's my body kind of again screaming at me, slow down. There is another way. And so before we can really address how to do this, you've got to identify and take time to say, this is what I want, and this is what I don't want. And sometimes it's hard to define what we want. Sometimes it's way easier to say, well, these are all the things that I don't want. And then it's like, well, what's left over? And my coach was doing that with me. She said, well, what do you want? What do you want your schedule to be like in terms of how it's laid out during the day? And I said, honestly, I really don't know. I don't know how to do that. And she said, okay, well, let's do the converse of it. What don't you want it to be? And then I began very quickly. I don't like the grind. I don't like feeling like I have to just cram all these people into a slot and then just go from person to person to person to person without being able to refill me, so that I can have that creative energy to help them in their health. And she's like, okay, that's great. What else don't you want? I said, I don't want to feel rushed. Right. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but we live in this. And she's like, no, don't go there. Why don't you want to be rushed? And I said, well, when I get into that urgency mode, then my creative intuition is out the window. And now I'm just trying to put things together from my brain instead of like my heart and my brain combined. And it's not as good as it could be. And she said, wow, that's beautiful. She's like, what else don't you want? And I said, I don't want to feel pressure to have to get something done in the moment of the conversation. And she was like, this is fantastic. She's like, okay, these are all the things you don't want. And then it wasn't getting to what I want now. She's like, why don't you want those? And so I took a break from what I was doing yesterday. I went outside, took a walk, let my mind clear. And I really then focused on, okay, why don't I want these things? And it was very evident, what came up. This is why I don't want these things. And then everything of what I actually want began to show up. This is what I want. This is how I want to feel when I'm with a patient. This is how I want to create and work with them to create their plan to help get them back into health. And so I'm still working on that, right? And it hasn't shown up exactly. And I think there's a challenge in it that we want everything right now. I don't want to have to do the work. The answer should just come.
Yes.
It should be here. And if it doesn't, there's something wrong with me. No, there's not. It's just this unfolding that's happening. And as I'm getting better at letting the process happen, things show up. And so my office manager and me, we changed our schedule around. So now I have a 2-hour break at lunch instead of 1, which usually means 30 minutes, not an hour, right? Or sometimes 15 because I go over. And now I'm rushed for the next, section of the day, which now I'm already at a deficit, at a loss. And then what happens when I go home with family? It's like, oh, you're kind of heavy. Like, there's this heavy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm fine. No, I'm really not. I'm exhausted. So to unpack this, sorry, you have to take time.
Yes.
There's not an answer. And if you want something different, then we can't keep doing the same things or going at the same pace. It's like we got to slow down and actually ask ourselves, what is most important? What do I want? How do I want to show up? Why do I want that? And I think the why keeps being refined. Why do I want this? Why is this so important? Why is this going to make a difference? And then the what and the how begin to manifest as we allow that to take place. And I see this in going back to patients. When they really figure out, why do I want this? They all know, what do you want? I want to be healthy. Okay, what does that actually mean? What is health to you? Well, I want this and this and this and this. Cool. Why do you want that? Well, I don't know. Maybe you got to figure that out, right? What other things, what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to do? And there's so many layers to health and healing. And I think those are some of the most important questions to ask. And it can be like, gosh, this is going to take forever. Like, well, what is this life about? It's about figuring out yourself, and you have a lifetime to do it. Isn't that a gift? Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Wow. That's very powerful. We definitely do live in a generation of wanting or seeking instant gratification, which is why, we're embracing the hustle culture. We're embracing the, just get to the point moments and not doing inner work that we're supposed to. Because at the end of the day, yes, we have a lifetime to, get to know ourselves. But if we don't know ourselves now, then the choices and the decisions we make have no meaning. It just means that they're influenced. So as part of like the closing reflections, can you share a story where addressing both the physical and emotional root causes of illness led to a breakthrough in a patient's health?
I'm just trying to think of like who I want to share.
Yeah. Walk us through this cycle where from the moment they stepped into your office, the approach and everything, and to where they are now and how they're doing.
So this person is still healing, right?
Okay.
I wouldn't say they're healed, but this has been one of the most, fulfilling journeys that I've been on with a patient. I've worked with her for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So we think, I want to be better in 2 months, 3 months, a year, right? 4 years that I've worked with her. And when I first met her, this is all virtual, right? Never actually met her in person. It's all been through Zoom. And very, very closed, very, like there was very low energy. And I found out quickly, and so she had been exposed to mold, so severe biotoxin illness from mold mycotoxins, a lot of environmental chemicals, glyphosate, heavy metals. I didn't quite know at that time in the beginning the emotional trauma that she'd been through as a kid. I could tell that there was that there, but we hadn't begun to unpack that yet. And so in symptoms, I mean, severe dysbiosis, severe gut problems, irregular bowels, very disruptive to life. Her brain, severe brain fog, can't think, extremely tired through the midday, have to leave, go home, take a nap, repeat. And it was really like, I'm not even living, I'm just existing. And I'm very depressed, right? And so I remember asking her one time, I'm like, hey, why don't you go outside today? And she looked at me like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do that? Like, you have to go to work. She's like, oh yeah, I go to work, I get food, I come home, and I don't leave. I'm like, well, what about like taking a walk? No. And there was this fear of people, a fear of being seen. And so, it's like, okay, let's tread lightly, but also like, let's have some opening up. And I remember I asked her one day, I said, okay, will you just go to your door and just open the door today? Just open the door and like see the light outside. That was a huge step. Like there was a lot of fear in just doing this, not on her way to work, but just opening the door. And she told me, she's like, I did it. And so now we're working on mold. We're working on helping to open up and support drainage, her liver, her kidneys, kind of getting those working a little better. And then I said, okay, now could you go outside and actually like put your feet in the grass? And it was like, whoa, wait, that's like a whole another level here. I'm still just opening the door. Anyway, over this period of time that we worked together, and also she didn't feel. She would not allow herself to feel anything. Didn't. She said, I can't identify what love is. I don't know what my body even feels like other than I'm just like exhausted. And so this is where you kind of take your tools and what you've learned and you throw some of it out the window that, okay, this normal stuff isn't going to work. How do I see you as another human being, not just as a chronic illness that we need to give supplements and protocols? And so we began to work on it. Those were needed, right? Those were absolutely needed things to help to bind toxicity, to help begin to clear that out of the body. But there was listening, and there was reflection and reassurance, and a little bit of reframing things that she would say, listening to her patterns of speaking, and reframing that in a way where, hey, we turn that negative or the way that you talked about yourself and showed kindness and grace. And now, so flash forward, that person that would not step outside, that would not take a walk, that wouldn't, I mean, the park was even like, that'll never happen.
Yeah.
Now she's someone that is doing Joe Dispenza meditations. She's going to an event with Joe Dispenza soon. And she's recognizing how her body, when bowel movements are happening or coming, where if she is able to relax and breathe and move into things, that her bowels work. And she's releasing this energy that's been trapped and bottled up for so long. She goes on long walks in the park. She loves the outdoors now. She loves listening to the birds, just all the sounds. And it's beautiful to see this change. And when I get emails from her, she's like, "You'll never guess." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what did you break through today?" And she's like, "I recognized that in this part of my body, I'd been holding on to this emotion for so long. I worked through it. I breathed through it. It was pretty harsh how it released, but now there's just this sense of peace." And I'm like, "Do you realize that you just used the word peace in your body?" And she's like, "You're right. I did. I am feeling that." And the way that she talks about herself is very different.
More
it's
optimistic.
Just been beautiful to see this transition. And, initially we were going to work together for a year. And as a practitioner, you don't think someone is where they're supposed to be. And you're like, "Gosh, what did I mess up on? What did I do?" And I sheepishly was like, "I think we need to work together for another year." And she's like, "No, I'm getting so much value. We do." I'm like, "Oh, there is value there." Right. And this is my own insecurity. And now it's been 4. And now she's kind of doing things on her own, but she will still write me and say, "Hey, guess what? This is what happened."
Wow.
Or, "I need a little bit of help on this area where I'm stuck. Can we talk?"
Yeah.
Or, "Is there a product or something else you think I could take to help, further this process?" And so she's gone from a place, this is the transition. She's gone from a place of complete lack of trust, shame and guilt for who she thought she was, to a place of love, of light, and this alignment with, this is who I am. I'm actually a very powerful woman that has a lot of gifts and a lot of things to share with the world. Not quite sure how she wants to do that yet, but it's remarkable to see the transition. And it hasn't been just one thing, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just emotion. It's been toxicity. It's been working on hidden infections, listening, reflecting, reframing, and just showing kindness and grace when there's still so much doubt and despair and mistrust. It's like, it's okay. Let's just work through it. What do we need to do? Yeah. And it's been beautiful to witness that and to be a part of that.
Yeah, I bet. It just gave me goosebumps. The part where you said it's been a transformation. Yeah. Honestly, it's amazing how much we can progress in life just by listening to ourselves, listening to our body, listening to our emotions, or the intuition, strengthening the intuition. So, Dr. Randy, what do you wish more people understood about the connection between mind, body, and spirit in health and healing?
I wish, and I'll point my finger to myself as this as well. I wish we realized how beautiful we actually are and how powerful we are. Not powerful to dominate, not powerful to subvert our will over another, but how powerful we are to help transform the lives of others. When you look into someone's eyes, there's beauty there, and it doesn't matter like where the state of someone is, right? You actually look into the eyes, gaze into the eyes of someone, and there's beauty there, and it may be hidden, but that's what I wish that people would see, is the beauty, the majesty that is within them, that is part of them, that's always been part of them. And it's like, it truly is their divinity within. I wish we saw that in ourselves. I wish we saw that in each other, because it's that connection that heals. It's when a soul connects with another soul that there's healing that took place. And as we have more of that connection, seeing each other in this divine way, that we begin to heal. We heal ourselves, we heal each other, we heal community. And that's what I wish that we saw more of.
Wow. That was amazing. And what you said, it reminded me of a quote that I read a few months ago, which is, when you heal, you heal a little bit of everyone else around you. So it's just so powerful how much power healing can have. And all it requires is just one step for us to take to start within us.
Until then, take care. And
Dr. Randy, this was an amazing conversation. Now, as parting words, where can our listeners find more information about you, your clinic, your podcast, and anything else related to you?
Yeah, so you can go to my podcast, which is Restore the Real. Our website is totalbodywellnessclinic.com. Don't forget the clinic at the end, Total Body Wellness Clinic. On Facebook, I have a Facebook group, Empower, Act, Heal. And those are really the best ways to find me, is through those channels.
Yes, and definitely Instagram, of course. Dr.
Yeah,
Rand.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do a lot on Instagram, but
Okay.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm working on that, right?
Yeah.
So working on that part.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Randy. It's been an amazing conversation. And I hope our audience, at least one person, this message touches at least one person, and I hope it creates a ripple effect.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time. I appreciate you and the questions and the space to be able to communicate and talk.
Thank you, Dr. Randy.